And then the deeper question is like, is that mine? Is that my truth? And so then you
Hmm.
start to look at what you're wanting to create, and you have endless opportunity to create whatever you want. And it
Hmm.
just feels limiting because of those beliefs that you're holding on to that aren't even yours.
I want to welcome you to Identity Evolution, the podcast where we explore the moments that shape who we become. I'm your host, Lorena Schuth, somatic self-concept and identity coach, and I'm here to guide you through the raw and the real and the transformative stories of reinvention. Today, we've got my very own business mentor as a guest, Haley Madison from the Onyx Business Academy. She is such an inspiring woman. And today on the Identity Evolution podcast, she will be sharing very vulnerably about her journey from growing up in a very unstable environment, which was marked by struggle and survival mode, to building a life of wealth and abundance, and the identity that she had to embody in order for that to become her reality, who she had to become. Haley grew up with food stamps, addiction in her family, and barely making ends meet. But she completely turned her life around. She chose not to settle, and she built multiple successful businesses and now has a completely different relationship with money. So if you've ever felt that where you're coming from means you're going to stay stuck there, you want to listen to this episode. Hello, Haley. I'm excited to have you here today.
Hi, babe.
God, I've missed you so much. I've already introduced you in the intro, but you've been my business mentor for years. And I hired you and
Mm,
Josh maybe 6 months after properly committing to my business and after having had some not so great experiences with other coaches. So I'm really excited to, kind of show everyone where also, because my business wouldn't exist in the form
mm.
it currently exists if it weren't for you. So I'm excited to introduce you to everyone. And we're going to talk today about the identity shift that you had to move through in order to get to the lifestyle that you have now, in order to get to where you are now, both internally and externally, which, as much as we can talk about the strategy and the business behind it all, today I really want to talk to you about your story, where you came from, what your journey was like on an identity level. I mean, I'll let you talk about it yourself, but you didn't come from wealth, right? When people see how you show up online today, this isn't who you always were, right? Or how you always were able to live. So I think just as with any identity shift and ultimately shift in external circumstances too, because without the ability to really hold that identity, external results tend to lack too. It's really important for everyone listening to realize that wherever they came from doesn't have to be a barrier. It's a starting point, but it doesn't have to be the end point. So that's kind of where I want to start, where you came from, right? Like I know you did
Yeah.
from wealth, you, as far as I know, grew up with even food stamps and with a lot of instability. So what was money or the idea of wealth like in your childhood home, emotionally, practically, or even energetically?
Mm. Oh, I love you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Oh,
I really like how you just said, it's not how you, like how you're living now or who you are now is not who you always were. Because I'm a big believer that, you make a lot of decisions that create who you become. And
mm-hmm,
I don't know if it's just like one defining moment where you decide, I'm going to live different, but more of like a combination of decisions you make and actions. So before you even get to that point, we're all born into a reality that we don't really have a choice around. And
mm-hmm,
for me, that looked like a mom who was a heroin addict, a dad who was a really hard worker, but took some time to find his way with how to raise three kids on his own and provide. And he had his own things he was dealing with and he needed to grow into to become the man and father he wanted to be. And he was such a good father. But it was just a really challenging childhood with my mom leaving us when we were really young because of drugs and addiction. And it's not really part of my story. I know you know that part of my story, but it's not so much of my story I share so often now. And it feels really good to be here with you and kind of go back into that because it is such a real part of my story. And, we need to normalize where we come from with creating success because most people who do create success don't come from wealth. A lot of it does require you to be self-made. And yeah, that was my starting point.
And it's powerful to see, for anyone who follows you now, or who will check you out now after listening to this episode, to just see the contrast to what you just shared.
Yeah,
Because a lot of the women that I work with, they are at a certain baseline, and they just see that as their status quo, and they just don't see a different reality because they've never experienced a different reality. And to an extent,
exactly.
that's obviously so normal, right? We can't really feel into what it feels like to live a completely different life and to be a different version of ourselves before we have a little bit of a taste of it. And it takes a lot of conscious effort. And I love how you phrased it around, the decisions you're making. And it is usually not one defining moment, but it culminates. It's multiple decisions, and it's choosing it again and again and again. And I think it's really important for people to see this contrast in order to realize wherever they are isn't where they need to be or need to
Exactly.
stay.
Yeah. And I think it's hard because
Mm-hmm.
like you said, or we said, like the decisions you're making, but going back to my story, since you asked,
Mm-hmm.
there was the point where I was really young and I was working three jobs. I was paying for everything on my own. I moved out when I was 17, and you just get so stuck in what seems like your reality that it takes a lot of courage to make decisions differently, especially when you're shown a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. So before you ever broke away from that reality,
Hmm.
how did you see yourself in relation to money? How, because you just said you were feeling stuck as
Hmm.
well, and that was your reality at the time, but it didn't have to stay your reality. So what was your thought process like when it came to money, when it came to wealth? What were some of the beliefs you maybe held on to as well? And did you also did you have that inside of you all the time? Because here's the thing, I feel like sometimes we have a part of ourselves that already knows we can have a different life, and sometimes we don't have access to that part at all. So I'm curious whether that was already alive for you, that although your reality looked one way, you always knew one day I will break out of this.
Yeah, it's a great question. What I think was really true for me at that time was looking at the negative influences in my life and or just the people in my life who were living a certain way that I knew wasn't my truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have these influences in your life, positive or negative, but either way, they hold these beliefs like deep in their body. And to look at that and recognize that that's not my truth, or that's not the way I'm going to live, or that's not what I want to build for myself, it's a really important thing to do and to be honest with yourself with. So, something I used to always say is that like the negative influences in my life had more of an effect on me than the positive ones because it was just so clear that I wasn't going to live like that. I didn't want to struggle like that. I didn't want to, you know, raise my kids like that, like whatever you want to say when it comes to, what you were shown. And then the deeper question is like, is that mine? Is that my truth? And so then you
Mm-hmm.
start to look at what you're wanting to create, and you have endless opportunity to create whatever you want. And it
Mm-hmm.
just feels limiting because of those beliefs that you're holding on to that aren't even yours.
Yeah. That's really, really powerful. I love that. And it, I don't really speak about this, but in the process that I take my clients through, a lot of it is about first getting clarity on what they desire and really claiming that. And the first thing we actually do is take responsibility and like be radically honest when it comes to looking at their current reality and taking stock and seeing what they don't like. So that's
Exactly.
kind of exactly what you just said, right? In order to figure out what you even want, you kind of need that duality. You need the contrast to figure out,
Hmm.
I don't want this. So then in contrast, what is it that I do want?
Yeah. And most people, they'll see those parts of their life where they're like, that's not what I want, or I don't identify by this, but they get so stuck in seeing that that's the only reality. And the thing is, so you got to break free from that and recognize that that's not mine. I didn't build this.
Mhm.
I didn't create this. I'm not going to continue to feed into this. So exactly
Yeah.
like what you said you do with your clients is you've nailed it, because you have to be willing to look at those things that are not comfortable.
Yeah. And what were some of the beliefs that you now remember you had that weren't yours, that were kind of handed to you through the circumstances or through what other people kind of presented to you? What was some of the stuff that you had to let go of?
We'll talk about this more as we get deeper into the
Hmm.
conversation around when I met Josh and
Okay. Hmm.
Lorena's other business mentor, and really what he opened me up to, because, getting exposure through people, why we hire mentors, right? It expands you. Um, so through him, I learned a lot about myself and what I was willing to look at. So one of the biggest, but I would say the number one belief is that I didn't have to struggle.
Hmm.
I was just always around struggle. It felt hard just getting by, and that was something I carried on for so long. Like, even when I started to make money, it was always just enough. I would have enough to like cover the bills, and then I'd have nothing. And it was always just like kind of like living in that pattern. No matter how much money I earned, I'd be right back to that place of just enough. So that was a really big one. I had to rewire in my brain that it's money isn't just about meeting the basic needs or having just enough. Like, it is a life force to stability and freedom and everything that you're wanting in this world. And so that was the first thing, is the element of just having enough and just getting by. I would say is probably the most important one when it comes to money. And also the layer deeper is that there's just so much wealth and money in this world, and there's no reason why you should limit yourself into thinking that I'm only going to earn this much, when it's just a story you're telling yourself. Because when I first started my first business, back when I was quite young. I was 21 when I started my first coaching business. This was about 10 years ago. And the first few months were brutal because I just had such a vision for what I wanted to create. And I would talk myself out of it constantly. And I would always just say, like, I would want to charge one thing and I would charge so much less because I didn't have the confidence or the vision, or at least the way I perceived myself wasn't
Hmm.
matching what I
Your
wanted
self
to earn.
concept.
My self concept exactly was not matching what I wanted to create. And
Yeah.
I would be so mad at myself, but it was a pattern from when I was a waitress and from when I was a kid and when I was this and when I was this. And it was just so not anything real, right? But
Yeah.
it was so real for me at the time. And until I could break free from that, I was holding myself back completely.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really powerful. And I think that's a really common um, experience as well. Like, even if you do make a decision, right, you do take an action step, that alone also isn't everything. Because if you can't see
No.
yourself in that way, then you're gonna struggle. If you see yourself as someone who's always going to be struggling, you're always going to be struggling. And I love that you also pointed out, because you mentioned, when you started your first coaching business at 21, which is young. Most people don't
Mm-hmm.
even do that at 21, especially when you did it. Like, that wasn't post COVID when the coaching industry
No.
was booming, right? It was a very different time as well. So
Yeah.
that's a bold move. And the fact
Mm-hmm.
that you already had that courage, that already speaks to, there having been something in you that was like, I want
Mm-hmm.
more. And at the same time, you just said, you were still coming up against these different self perceptions. So I think that showcases really nicely that this isn't linear by any means. It's
Mm-hmm.
something, you know, that where we continually need to evaluate internally and make the choice to see ourselves differently and to embody something different. But what I would love to, but what I would love to know as well, and I feel like we can maybe discuss this, or you can answer this in two levels, because I know there was almost like a point before Josh and after Josh. Um,
Yeah, to say the least.
it's like
Oh
Jesus
my
Christ, you
gosh.
know?
Yeah. Oh
Before
my
Christ and
gosh.
after Christ. Okay.
Awakening.
But you know, you already started your empowerment business so young,
Yes.
so there must have been some type of moment or some decision point where you looked at your reality and you were like, I will not repeat the story. This will not be my life.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, from what you shared and from what I know as well, this accelerated even more when you did meet Josh. So
Mm-hmm.
let's maybe put this,
The two
let's
different
maybe treat
parts.
this at, yeah, two different parts. So first with your empowerment business, and you know, when you
Mm-hmm.
decided to do that and, you know, leave everything behind and take a huge risk, really, or a huge leap of faith. What was going through your head there, and what was the decision making process for you to say, I will not stay in this reality and I will not be
Mm-hmm.
this woman, this will not be my life?
There was so much addiction in my reality from my family, and it was just a really hard time. And I just remember waking up one day and just seeing someone in my life relapsed one more time, and I was just like, I'm done. It's like I can't do this. And if I had to pinpoint a defining moment, that would be it. But it was so much more than that. It was just like so much led to that point where I just started to move different. And
Mm-hmm.
I I sold everything I owned. I packed up a backpack. I moved to the country I live in now, Bali. I've been here 9 years now. And I just moved my life across the world and started over from zero. And at that point, it was 100% escapism. It was like I
Mm,
needed to get as far away from everything I knew to create something different for myself. And that's extreme. And I wouldn't encourage majority of people to do that. But to me at the time, it was the only thing that made sense was to get completely removed from the reality. And looking back, I'm so glad I did because it was obviously one of the best things I ever did for myself. But even as I started to really build a business, and my business took off quickly, which I'm really grateful for, but it took some months to figure out my way in it and to learn how to be an entrepreneur and to learn how to show up in this new way of being. And I was so used to providing for myself, but it was so different when you were depending on yourself to generate. And so I took it really seriously from the start. And I didn't want to just be someone, again, who was just getting by. And I saw that pattern playing out the first few months. And yeah, I just had to really be honest with myself. And what was the point of doing it if I was going to struggle even more?
yeah,
You know, because I
yeah.
think a lot of people, from the lens of business at least, if we wanted to look at self-concept through the lens of business, they start these businesses and they just carry on their patterns and they continue to struggle when you really have to be honest with yourself when you're building something where you're completely dependent on yourself to generate. You have to be honest with yourself. And yeah, so I started to look at myself honestly and just making decisions to align with the reality I wanted to create and what I wanted to be. I didn't want to just be a traveler who was just getting by. I didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
not be able to pay the bills, and I had nobody to fall back on either. I think that was something that was hard at the time, but if I look back at that time in my life, it was a gift to not have someone to depend on if I quote unquote failed
Yeah, it pushed
because
you.
it pushed me. It required me to really show up in a way that I don't think I would have if I had someone backing me up or someone that could catch me if I fell. So that was before Josh. That was when I was
Yeah,
really building myself.
yeah. Wow. I love I love your courage even at, such a young age. And you're right. You could have very easily taken the same patterns into this
Hmm.
new environment. That's actually what I did for most of
Exactly.
my life. I was in escapism, and I would move from place to place to place and just take the same bullshit with me
Yep.
everywhere I went. And even now, like, I really had to reprogram this last year.
Mm.
And I know you know a lot about this because we were like working together and everything, but I really had to honestly ask myself, hold on, Lorena, you started this business because you wanted to be in your purpose. You wanted to do something that lights you up. You wanted to make impact. And what are you currently doing? You're hustling in the same toxic way that you did when you were working the corporate job that you wanted to break out of. And you just took the same bullshit internally,
Hmm.
the same attitude into into this new project. What's the freaking
What's the
point?
point?
What's the
What
point?
is the
Like,
point?
it just
Exactly.
doesn't make sense, but it's so easy to do because we always take ourselves with us, and if we don't change the
Mm.
way we see ourselves and our reality, then we can be in a new reality, and we can you know not be able to sustain it, or we cannot let it in. And I see this also with a lot of clients, like in the relationship department, when someone, for example, struggles to call in a relationship because they maybe don't feel worthy of it, or they don't feel chosen in their life, and then they get the relationship and they are chosen, but they still don't feel it, and they sabotage the good thing that they have. So it's with any reality, it applies. And
It applies, exactly.
yeah, and you really had to not take that struggle attitude with you. So it's not just, oh, I'm
Yes.
taking this leap of faith and I'm selling everything I own and I'm starting a new life. You also couldn't take the struggle with you, because that would have been very easy to do. You could have easily
Oh,
taken the struggle with you.
absolutely. Absolutely. And unfortunately, most people do that. And I love how, I know your business quite well from working with you for
Hmm.
so long. You're so grounded in the way that you help your clients acknowledge what they're perceiving themselves as and having like that honest conversation with themselves. And it's some of the most important work you'll ever do, whether it's relationships or business or health, whatever it is, because there's so much we're holding on to that either isn't yours to begin with or an old story that you need to let go of.
Yeah. And it's the same with, to bring it back to the conversation around money and wealth, it's the same with those stories. What actually came to me earlier, and I don't know where I heard this, but like if I remember, I'm going to credit the person in the show notes. But
Mm,
I heard someone say the way you feel about, like, the best way to determine what your beliefs around money are is to see what the first word is that comes to your mind when you think about money. And
mm,
I'm curious actually what this maybe was for you in the past and what it is now. Because I have some thoughts based on what you shared earlier. But if something comes for you,
mm.
I would love to know.
The thought in the past, what money, the word would have been, was just freedom. Like
Mm-hmm.
to me, I would have 100% related it to freedom. And now I relate it to stability,
Ah,
which
interesting.
as, yeah, because as I've matured, back then I wasn't looking for stability. In my reality, I just wanted to be free from everything that was. And I don't think I understood to the extent I do now of what it means to create freedom. And we can go into that. But now I understand like the foundational bit of freedom is having stability and
Mm-hmm.
having the means to protect yourself, having the means to make sure you're provided for, having the means to, yeah, just really build out that life that you're after. And in effect, you create freedom. But I think I was at first, when I was trying to build that life that I wanted, I was totally bypassing the importance of building that stability. So I don't
Yeah.
know if that answers the question the way that you needed, but
I
that's
mean,
how I would absolutely relate to it.
Yeah, I don't need it any specific way, but yeah, I think that's interesting as well. Well, first of all, it's interesting because even though your past reality was so different, even the word you used was still desire led. You know, you could have
Exactly.
said struggle or restriction or not enough or something like this, and you didn't. You said freedom. So that I think says a lot about, although you had these beliefs around money and these beliefs around
Mm,
yourself, you had the drive towards the
yeah.
future you wanted to create. So I think
What's
that's really,
interesting
really
though, like
powerful.
if you, not to cut you off, but if you asked me
Mm.
that question in the time, I probably
Uh-huh.
would have said a struggle word,
Yeah, fair enough.
right?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
interesting. And maybe
yeah,
if you are in that state where a struggle word comes up, you need to do something about your relationship with it.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's good for people who are listening to maybe sit with that question themselves. For me, it definitely, I don't know what exactly the word would have been in the past, but I think in the past it would have been, maybe it would have been similar to actually what you say now about stability, but it would have been more like safety because I didn't feel safe.
Mm,
I didn't
yeah.
feel safe having money, and I also didn't feel, I didn't trust that I
Hmm.
would get it or that I could generate it. And now I think for me the word is more around expansion or growth
Yeah.
because I now see money as something that can grow and that you can, like that abundance and that there is always more, um, which wasn't something that I perceived at all in the past. So I think it's interesting how your relationship with it really changes. Let's talk about part two, which is post
Yes,
Christ.
Joshua.
After,
I could tell this in like a storytelling point because when I first started to really create what I felt was success for myself, I was talking to him online at the time. So we met through Instagram, through friends, and we just kind of really built a deep relationship. And I was the type of person who had to learn how to be an entrepreneur, where he, like, through birth, was just like in his body. He's just a naturally born great at business. Like, that's just who he is to his core. So at the time when we were talking online, I was, running my business. I was doing really well. He started helping me on the back end by just like giving me support on where to be placing my energy in my business and really helping me grow it. And then when we met in person, I had already created this life where I was really proud of it. 'Cause, I made something of myself. I was self-made to the point of where I was proud of myself. And I remember I flew to Australia to meet him in person. And I don't think before we met in person, I really understood the life he had built for himself because he
Mhm.
picks me up, he brings me to his house, and it's a 40-acre property. It was so beautiful. And I was like, whoa, the person is a man. Like he had already established himself in ways that I hadn't really been exposed to with someone in like my close proximity.
Mhm.
And so I was like, whoa, people really do this. You meet all these people who say they're going to buy the land, they're going to do this, and he had done that for himself. And I just remember being so, I just opened my eyes to, yes, I had created success, and yes, I really built something special for myself. But wow, there was so much more available.
Mhm. Oh, that just gave me goosebumps.
Well, he exposed me to just so much more than I let myself see that I could create for myself because he just has such a mind where, I mean, Lorena, you know it. He
Mhm.
just has this mind where he's just so clear with how he perceives money and it's not attached to his identity at all. It's
Mhm.
just this external thing and there's no emotion connected to it. And yeah, he's really opened my eyes in a lot of ways. And I've changed since being with him and, building this business with him over the last 6, almost 7 years.
Yeah. So, how did you then, after meeting Josh, based on, what he exposed you to in terms of attitude, in terms of reality, and then obviously you starting this business together, how did it change the way you saw yourself and what's possible for you?
Mhm. We met when I was 24 in person. So I feel that through our relationship, which, you can look at self-concept through the lens of anything. And if you
Mhm.
look at it like my relationship with him through the lens of like relationship and self-concept, I was a girl when we met. And then, when we got into a relationship, I became like the woman that I wanted to be.
Mm.
And that was something that was really special.
When it comes to wealth as an energy, right? As an identity, because it's one thing to look at the external reality, it's another thing to look at how you're feeling this. Do you remember, do you have any inkling as to when you first felt wealthy within yourself, regardless of what the circumstances looked like?
Hmm. Yeah. I would say in the early days of starting my business, and I started to get clients, and I started to see I could do this for myself. Because it wasn't that the physical money came at that point just yet, but it was the principle that I had proof that I could do this for myself. And so I didn't need all of the money and all of everything that I would create further down the line to acknowledge that or to be able to access that. One thing that Josh always says, and I like how he explains this through this point of view, is that like when you know you're someone who's going to be successful and you haven't created yet, it's like that's interesting.
Mm,
So whether it's like you're not in a healthy relationship yet or you haven't created success through your business yet, but you see yourself so clearly that you're going to have that, but you haven't had it yet, you just think like, oh, it's so interesting how I haven't created this success yet, or it's so interesting that I haven't met my life partner yet, or it's so interesting how I don't have my acreage yet, whatever it is. But you know
mm,
that's where you're headed. So it was having the proof that this was possible, even if I hadn't yet stepped into that reality
yeah.
and holding on to that proof, holding on to that faith and that internal knowing.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that attitude, this, oh, that's interesting, because it's that is a self-concept
That is
shift before the
self-concept.
reality shifts. Yeah, that's basically that's what manifestation in action looks like, right? When you're already like the reality you're currently living in isn't the one that feels natural and normal anymore. It feels almost a bit
Hmm.
foreign because it's like, that's weird. That doesn't make sense that that I'm not where I already am internally. But, it comes with an element of there's not that resistance. There's not that resistance of, oh, when is it going to change? And what do I need to do to make it change? It's more an attitude of I already am that. It's already in process. It's already happening. That just hasn't caught up yet. I'm still on the way
Exactly.
when it comes to this, or to the external. And yeah, I love that. That is also, especially coming from Josh, someone who is not very like woo woo.
Exactly.
It's actually like really funny how he's the master of manifestation at the same time.
Yeah, and it's just being able to see that so strongly in yourself. Like, I'm going to be someone who's successful. I'm going to
Mhm.
be in a healthy relationship. I'm going to be someone who really builds something for myself and being able to hold that even if you haven't yet created it. And it does take work to get to that point to be able to see yourself, but that's the beautiful thing about having big goals and having a really healthy relationship with yourself and who you are. That's why self-concept work is some of the most important work you'll ever do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree for obvious reasons. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I promise the second half will be even better. If you have been enjoying this conversation and you want to embark on your own self concept transformation, then download my free self concept mastery blueprint to get started with your own identity evolution. The link is in the show notes. Now let's get back to the interview. I also really love, and this, also speaks a lot to the values that you have in your business and in your program, and what really resonated with me when I back in the day when I first started working with you, which by the way, that was 2021. Isn't that insane?
That is absolutely insane. Oh my gosh. I was thinking about that the other day, actually. It's been a long
Yeah,
time.
it was
Wow.
2021. I remember it vividly. Money Matrix got me. But yeah, what really pulled me in as well is that our values really align when it comes to prioritizing sustainability. And you said something earlier about when you first started your empowerment coaching business, you were also holding on to the proof that you had, even if that wasn't yet the money or the wealth, because you were already seeing the big picture, and you were living in, it's not going to stay
Mm-hmm.
like that. Like, I can see I can create this for myself, even if it's not here yet, which I think is so important to celebrate the little wins, because first of all, it is going to take time. And even for people where it doesn't take time, they often can't sustain it because it's almost like too
Mm-hmm.
much for their nervous system. And then they collapse in on it again if their self concept hasn't shifted along with that. And so you were doing that from the beginning. And it's also a big value of yours when it comes to, the work that you do in Onyx. So I think that's a really important thing to note as well, that
Mm-hmm.
sustainability aspect.
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate for sustainability. Again, going back to my childhood, I didn't have that growing up,
Yeah.
right? And so having opportunity to create that in my business and in my life as an adult, I wouldn't trade that for the world. I think it's the number one important thing when wanting to, again, going back to the idea of building a life of freedom, sustainability, and building something that really creates that safety in yourself.
Cool. Since you mentioned, the contrast between, your life growing up and your life now, or what you created now, I'm curious also if there was maybe some grief in outgrowing your old identity, even though it was laced with scarcity or maybe family patterns. Was there a part of you that also grieved what you left behind?
I like how you said laced with, because that just nailed it. I wouldn't say that I grieved letting go of who I was. If anything, I grieved what could have been.
Mm-hmm.
A really hard thing for me to accept as I, like, the further and further away I got from that reality. I would always look back, well, things could have been like this, or it should have been like this. And I just always held on to the idea of how I would have preferred things. And a lot of grief definitely came up with that. And now, present day, I experience grief in a different way because I have such a beautiful, healthy relationship with my family. And because of the decisions I made back then, my life looks like what it does now. And I still live across the world from them. I just have a completely different life than I did growing up. And so the grief today is more around, accepting that I'm not going to live close to my family and accepting that, I made the choices I have and I love my life today, but there's always going to be a piece of grief of like, well, it could have been like this. And a big part of it is fully standing behind the life you choose for yourself and knowing why you made the decisions, even if they didn't make sense at the time, which definitely didn't for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really beautiful. And I relate a lot to that as someone who also left, their country to
Exactly.
move abroad. I feel like every decision you make, even if it's a decision for the future you want to create, there's always something you're leaving behind that you're grieving or that you're having to grieve.
Exactly.
But then at the same time, you having created this life for yourself, you're also showing your family what's possible. You're showing all the people in your past,
Mm.
family, friends, whoever, that if things can be different for you, they can be different for them too. I think that's important too. Like when we do the work to create the life that we want, when we create, step into the versions of ourselves, into the self concept that we want, like it impacts everyone around us. And, like for me, I can also speak to this when it comes to you specifically, because, I had already done so much work on my self concept, but you really expanded my worldview and showed me so much more of what was
Mm.
possible. So, I think that's also another vote for really putting yourself around people who can expand you in that way, and, letting, if you struggle to perceive that the things you want are possible, get around people who do believe that it's possible and who have created it for themselves.
Absolutely. And we talk about, creating more for yourself. And I said before that like the negative, whatever term you want to use, but like the negative influences in my life weren't always the most supportive ones.
Hmm.
And if I would have held back then due to not wanting to make changes because of what my environment was, I wouldn't be where I am today. But also, I don't know if my family is where they are today because I made the decisions I have, or they had to go through their own journey. But either way, my family is a completely different place in their life, and I'm so grateful for that. But I know for a fact it took every single one of us in my family to make those decisions. And yeah, it's just a hard thing to do.
Yeah, totally. And, you already, even when you were much younger, you made decisions based on where you wanted to go. So, how is that for you today, as the version you are today? How does the version of you that you are right now make decisions differently?
Mm. I make decisions much quicker and long-term focused now. Because back then, obviously, I was quite impulsive, like moving across the world, selling everything I own. And while I'm so grateful for that version of myself, now when I make decisions, I think about what I'm wanting my life to look like. And I think that's part of self-concept also, because now I see myself as someone who is able to create that reality when back then I didn't really know what I wanted. I followed the feeling. And
Hmm.
that's what I needed at the time. I made decisions based off what I wanted my life to feel like. And now when I make decisions, I don't like the word strategic because that's not very sexy, but I'm more future focused on knowing that I'm in control of what it is I'm creating because I know what I want more clearly now.
Yeah, that's really powerful. That's a powerful shift, I think. And do you still sometimes have moments where you look around and you're like, hold on, what? Where
Yeah.
you're almost like in that old version of yourself, like seeing your life and how you live now from that old version of yourself. And you're like, what? Like, that's crazy. Or is that not part of your perception anymore?
Definitely. And, I look at this reality now and I'm like, wow, in
Hmm.
such a short time, outside looking in, I say less than 10 years ago did I completely decide I'm going to change my life. And here we are today living this reality that I now have. And that is not a long time to, shift and change. And things happen so quickly. So sometimes I look back and I'm like, wow, because in my entire 20s was, I'm in my 30s now, and my entire 20s was devoted to setting up the life I was going to live. And that's a
Creating the
really big thing,
foundations. Hmm.
creating the foundations. And sometimes I look back and I'm like, wow, she did it. Because that version of myself back then is the one who did this. I'm just
Hmm.
maintaining it now and I'm building more. But who I am today, I can't take credit for that.
Yeah.
It was that girl that was scared. It was that girl that didn't know what she was doing. It was that girl who just trusted her feelings. And that's the version of me that I celebrate and I honor her every day.
Yeah. So, how would you now, if we can put it in like one sentence or something, because we talked about it a lot now, but how would you describe your self concept or your identity now in relation to money, success, all these things, wealth?
Hmm. I would say healthy. It's just
Hmm.
very clear. I don't attach my worth to money or finances, and I don't make stories around money anymore like I used to when I was younger. It's just there's such an unlimited amount of money in this world and it circulates. And a few years ago, I probably around the time you started working with us, Lorena, I made the decision I was going to learn to be an investor.
Mm.
And because I didn't want to depend on Joshua to, manage all of our money and finances, because if he ever got sick or if something happened, I wanted to make sure that I was able to hold things when it comes to money. Like that felt really safe for me. Because I know a lot of women, the dream is to find a partner who is just already in that world. And I just didn't want to be in a vulnerable place with our family if something ever happened. Anyway, so I bring that up because investing and learning how to move money was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It challenges you, it makes you look at yourself different, but also it teaches you to completely detach your emotions from money. And when you do that, you're able to start seeing it as just this thing outside of you that there's no limit to how much money you can have or how much money you can earn. And I think a lot of people value money more than other things because of how much weight they put in money. And it's just messy at that point. So it's clear. I take it back. The word I'm going to use is clear. I have a really
Hmm.
clear relationship with money.
Yeah, I like that. And I love how you emphasize that, you're not attaching your worth to it. And I
Hmm.
think that applies to money, but it also applies to other things, right? Like I gave some examples like from clients and from my work, where it's, sometimes it's money, sometimes it's success, sometimes it's relationships. And I think we can externalize our power and our worth so easily, right? If I'm only worthy if I'm chosen by this person, I'm only worthy if I make a significant amount of money, or if something happens and I don't lose that money, and I lose that money, then I'm not worthy anymore. And I know that you and Josh specifically also always speak about, how the mindset of a wealthy person, it doesn't matter what their reality looks like, because if they go bankrupt, they trust themselves to know how to make money. Whereas, someone who has like a more restrictive mindset, they can have a lot of money, but they don't, they can come into a
Hmm.
lot of money, but they probably won't be able to maintain it because they still don't have that self concept attached to that
Yep,
reality. So detaching your worth, I think, is a really, really important point.
absolutely. And money is a skill set.
Yeah.
That's first and
Mm-hmm.
foremost at the end of the day. In today's world, the economy that we live in, it truly is a skill set. And so once you learn how to make money and you're not attaching it to your identity, there's no cap. You're no longer blocking yourself from calling it in or creating it more so.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I love that you also have this grounded approach, right? Because yeah, it is a skill set. It is something, it's we can't just sit here and meditate and then money is going to fly to
No.
us. We have to actually do something, and
Yeah.
generate it. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. I
um
always say that I didn't have the luxury to just sit back and call it in because
yeah.
it just, I don't know. I just think there's a level of being really honest with yourself on what is required to create like real success in the world that we live in. And
Yeah.
I have so much respect for you because you have that understanding. Like you have a home, you have a lot going for you that you have created because you were really honest with yourself with what is going to be required for me to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, if we were to see it in this woo-woo way of just meditate our way into it, even if you get something through some miraculous, circumstance, what then? What's next? Like now you're gonna have to rely on that happening again and again and again. It's much more powerful if you like know how to actually do it, and you know how to do it again and again
Yeah,
and again, and to also maintain it.
exactly. Yeah, I think we've talked about this before, but it's like those people who are teaching, like, learn how to manifest like a business class flight. I'd rather be a woman who has the ability to just buy myself a
Yeah,
first
I
class or
know.
business anytime I want,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
just these. these things that sound nice, but is it actually sustainable? And is it actually going to deliver the lifestyle that I want long term?
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I hate saying this, but it's just so it runs rampant, especially in the manifestation space where people are like, "Oh, I manifested, I don't know, 20K overnight." And then it's like their parents haven't given them money, which there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's
Hmm.
nothing wrong with
Yeah.
receiving support, but you can't then sell that as, like I magically manifested money. And I think that is also something, people need to be discerning also with who they listen to, and, having a bit more of a grounded approach, because in today's world, I think there's a lot of toxic messaging around things like
Hmm.
that, because it feeds into people's desperation and desires. And it's a very vulnerable place um,
Hmm.
to to speak to when you speak to people's desires, right? Like it's the most vulnerable thing.
Absolutely.
So how have your desires changed? Because now I'm sure that when you first started, the life you have now, it's like, whoa. But I'm sure now your vision has also expanded massively with that. So, how has that changed for you?
Yeah, I mentioned before that through my relationship and through my business, like I became a woman and I've just changed so much in who I am. So that's of course going to influence what I want for myself. And the biggest goal I have right now that we're actively working towards is when we have kids in a few years, I want to be able to retire from the
Mm,
business. And so this is like down the line. Onyx is still young. We're still rebirthing it. We're building 3.0 version right now. So it's not anything short term. I know, I'm so excited.
me too.
But I know like we're working on so much. So it's not like this is long term. You know, you talked about the vision long term. But so when we go to
Mhm.
have kids, to be able to retire the business and focus on just being parents, our investments, and we're just building that foundation now so we can access that reality then. And that's why we're working so quote unquote hard or so intentional right now to be able to have that lifestyle at that time. So that's probably my biggest thing. And I didn't recognize how important that is until like I got the urge to really be a mom. And I've always had this maternal knowing and need. I think it's influenced in the way I hold you guys, our clients, and how I mentor our students. But when I turned like 28 a couple years ago, I just had like this shift in my body where I was like, I need to be a mom. Like I just knew I was going to be a mom, and it was so strong. And so my devotion shifted towards setting a strong foundation for our kids, and it heavily influences our marketing now. You know, we work with so
Mm,
many moms or parents or just our students in general are so driven towards the life that they want to provide for their kids, and it means a lot to me because the way I was raised was so different than the lifestyle I know I'm going to give my kids. And so that's one of my biggest goals. And we have bigger visions as well. You know, we do a lot of reforestation work and work with planting trees globally, and it's something we're really passionate about, both Joshua and I. We have a background, he has a background in permaculture, and we live on a river now. We have a fruit forest. So we definitely have a vision of once we're at that point where we have the space to get into different projects, like when we do retire, opening permaculture farms around different places of the world to be able to grow food. And yes, we have a lot of different visions, and to build out that vision does require success and wealth. So right now, the season of life we're in, we started this business 6 years ago, and like I said, we're still in the prime, right, years. It still
mhm.
feels early. We're not going to close it down anytime soon, but we're just building a lot of seed money right now to
Yeah.
contribute to our future, to put into our investments, to put into bigger projects that we see, because we do make a lot of impact through Onyx and through the reforestation projects we have, but the vision we have is much bigger, and we're just building the frame to be able to hold that when the time comes.
Yeah. I love that. And I also love how the visions that you just mentioned, I mean, you obviously have created such an amazing life already and such an amazing business. And anyone who doesn't yet follow you, really encourage them to,
Thank you.
to check you out and to just see like your energy, your messaging, like there's so much value in it, and also to see like the life you live. But I also love that the vision you just stated, that wasn't all about you. It was also about the impact you create, right? Be that through reforestation projects, be that through, having your own family. Um, and I think that's very important to note as well. And I can, note this as well from my perspective as a client, because sometimes people hold themselves back from their desires because of their own limited perceptions. But when we do that, we don't just keep ourselves small, we keep others small too. Because if you hadn't
Hmm.
chosen to do the things differently, to live from a different identity and reality and create that for yourself, if you hadn't met Josh, if you didn't have the business you have now, my reality would look different too. It creates a ripple effect. And we're talking about this now primarily in the context of wealth, but it obviously applies in other areas too. If you hold yourself back from a relationship through your own limited self perception, your child might never be born, right? Like, it sounds so
Exactly.
intense. Yeah, but we
Yeah.
really make impact beyond ourselves when we choose to expand into a new self concept, a new reality, a new identity. So yeah, I think that's really, really powerful to mention as well.
It's so powerful. And like you said, it definitely bleeds into relationships. I think even before wealth, relationships are some of the most important things you'll ever experience in your life, right? I look back to when I met Josh in person. I just had this knowing after talking online for a year and a half that I had to go meet him. And if I would have went any sooner, we always say that it wouldn't have worked because we both
Mm.
just got to that point where we knew that was the time. I don't think people listen to that knowing enough.
Yeah,
Like you can
yeah,
feel in your body when you need to do something. And too many people rationalize or talk themselves out of it because of who they are in that moment making the decision or,
yeah.
what their self-concept is up until that point.
And it's also like fear is going to get the loudest when you're on the verge of making the decision. I always think about,
Exactly.
do you know the tarot card, the Fool? It's like this
Slightly.
little guy who's like standing on this edge of a cliff and
Hmm.
just looking into the sky, like la la la, starting his journey like very naively. And he's just walking, right? Not knowing what comes, because not every part of the journey is going to be easy or pleasant. And I always think what people do is they get to that edge, they get to that cliff edge, and they are
Hmm.
about to make an important decision to start their journey. But the moment they get to that edge, their fear kicks in and their mind finds all the excuses. And then instead of leaping, they just go back, even though they felt
Yep.
that feeling in their body that you're describing so strongly before. Like, that could have been you. You could have been,
Hmm.
I'm not gonna go meet this guy now. I've committed, but nah, fuck this. I'm gonna stop. You could have stopped or quit at any point in your journey. And, same for me. I could have I could have talked myself out of working with you as well, very, very easily. And it's those decisions, like, if we don't listen to that inkling in our bodies, we're just keeping ourselves in the reality that's familiar to us. We're not going to
That's
experience
what it
anything
is.
new. So the only thing that I've got left is my three closing questions, which, if you've listened before, you probably know what they are. But before I do that, I just want to check if there's anything that you wanted to share that you haven't talked about yet, that I haven't asked about yet. Then feel free to share that as well before we do the closing questions.
Can I redirect it to you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I know you so well, and we've been working with you for like 5 years now, and you sold out launches quicker than anybody I've ever seen. What is your biggest spark when it comes to self-concept that led you to this work and continues to keep you on this path with helping the women that you help? What's the impact you see that you're making?
Wow. Didn't expect you to interview me. Um, so for me, it is it's really that I see so many women, and I'm also speaking about a past version of myself, and even sometimes a present day version of myself, because
Hmm.
it's never over. um Settle. Like, they
Yeah.
have a desire, they're so clear on what that desire is, but they just stop themselves because they somehow think that everyone can have what they want, but they're so fucking special that for some reason they are so flawed. And what just drives me is the fact that I have proven it to myself so many times what is possible, and I just think we're here on this planet to really live our lives, and life is fucking short. Like, it could be over
Mm.
any day. So why not go all in on what we really want, and why not do the work to see ourselves as someone worthy of having that? Because like, in a few generations from now, even if you get famous, or even if you have children, probably no one's going to talk about you anymore. That's just the reality of things. Like, who knows what their great 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 grandfather's life was like? You have no
Mm.
idea. So why not live life on your terms? So that is really what drives me, because I hate seeing women just hold themselves back from that just because they fear consequences or what other people think of them, because who the
Yep.
fuck cares?
Who the fuck cares? Exactly. And going back to that, like looking when I was making those bold decisions when I was younger, like the girl I said I give credit to, the people who I feared opinions of back then, like I couldn't even tell you who it was. It
Don't even
doesn't
know their
matter.
names.
I don't even know that, like, I don't even, like, it's so in the past now, but it's so real in that moment. But yeah, the work you do is so powerful, Lorena, and everybody should know that because you are just amazing.
Oh, I love you. I'm gonna
I love you
cry.
so
Stop it. Okay, we're gonna move on to the closing questions now, so I don't get emotional.
Okay.
Lose all my professionalism. Okay, so this is a little ritual. To close, I always like to ask each guest three questions, and one is going to be about the past, or the past version of you. One is about the present, and one is about what's beyond the horizon, what's still coming. And
Okay.
I want to start by asking if the version of you from, you can choose if you want to make it, the 10 years ago version of you, or if you want to make it the pre-Josh version of you, or if you want to make it even the version of you from a year ago, whatever resonates the most. But if that past version of you watched your life today for one day, what would surprise them the most?
Oh, this is a really good question. Probably how present I am with what I've built. Because, like I said in the past, there was a lot of needing to escape, and there was just this unsatisfaction, and yeah, this desire for something different. And the fact that I'm just so in this life and so settled and so at peace, I think the past version of me would be like, how the fuck did you get there?
Yeah, that's powerful. And you feel safe in it as well, right? I think that's an important point
Yeah,
too, to feel stable and safe in that.
exactly.
Okay, so for the present, we're getting a bit more abstract. If you were cast in a film as the current version of yourself, what would the genre be?
Oh, what would the
Mm.
genre be? Romance. I love to romance my life. I just love to romance my life. I mean, my life feels so mundane on a day-to-day basis. Like, you know me, I kind of just like a very simple life. I'm just so in my reality, but I love to romance my life. So I think that would absolutely be definitely not a dramatic adventure. It would
Yeah.
not be anything like that. It would just be like definitely a romance.
Oh, I love that. And then for the future, if the next version of you was a landscape, what scenery would you now be walking into?
Hmm. A forest full of flowers.
I like it. Any
Yeah,
particular flower?
all of them.
All of them. Yeah.
Every flower. Yeah.
Abundant. Yeah. I love it.
Abundance of flowers.
Beautiful.
Oh,
Such feminine answers.
very feminine being.
Yes. Yeah, that's also so beautiful, like seeing you and Josh, like the what you've created both in terms of your program and your business, but also seeing you together. It's like this beautiful flow, you know, you are very feminine, but not in a like in a
Woo woo,
you know,
airy.
yeah, exactly. You're still grounded. You're still a grounded woman, but you have a very feminine presence and energy. And Josh is
Mm,
like very masculine in his energy and presence. And it's just this really healthy, you know, dance almost. So yeah, that's really
yeah.
beautiful as well. Okay, so I will obviously leave your Instagram and the page for Onyx and all of the things below. And, you know, for anyone listening, anyone who has ever asked me, Lorena, who was the business coach you hired? Who would you recommend? Hands down. This is the link you want to click, people. This is where you want to apply if you want to build a successful vision led coaching business. From my perspective, I also really want to say that from my experience, this program is really, really comprehensive, and it's definitely for those coaches who actually have a vision, and not just for those who want to make a quick buck and who want you know results yesterday. And you know, I feel like I always have to say this, sadly, due to past experience as well, that this isn't for those who look at my business and want to copy what I'm doing or what another coach is doing. You've got some really powerful leaders in this container who have like some really
Hmm.
beautiful visions, and I think that is an amazing space you provide. So I want everyone to know that this is an amazing program, and I also want to give you the space here to just let everyone know where they can find you, how they can work with you, and
Mm,
anything else you'd like the world to know, basically.
yeah. So we have Onyx Business Academy. It's been our program for the last 6 years. We're always adding to it, evolving it, and this is the same program Lorena went through all those years ago and continues to go back to. And yeah, so you can always find us there. You can find me on Instagram as Haley Madison. But it's a really powerful program. We've had hundreds of leaders graduate this program, some of them most powerful ones in the space. So I recommend you check it out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really nice to also have such a thriving community inside, because yeah, there are some really powerful people in there too. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Haley. Thank you for doing this with me, for taking the time and for sharing your wisdom. It's always a
I
joy.
love you, girl.
Love you too. I absolutely love having these conversations because every story really reminds us that you can use any experience for your evolution, not just your breakdown. It also shows us that transformation is never linear. It's personal, it's messy, and it's what makes us human. I'm Lorena Schuth, and this was Identity Evolution. Come and find me on Instagram at Lorena Schuth, linked in the show notes, and DM me and share your key takeaway from this episode with me. I would love to know. You'll also find guest links and details in the show notes if you want to connect more deeply with them. And you'll also find my self-concept coaching program, Recreate Yourself, if you are feeling ready for your identity shift. If this episode stirred something in you, make sure you subscribe and ideally leave a quick review and rating wherever you are listening or watching. This really, really helps more people find these stories of self reinvention. See you next time.